infrastructure domain session as part of the buildingSMART International Standards Summit here in Valencia 2024. Thank you for joining us today. My name is John Proctor and I am your moderator. Details of today's session are on the screen. This is the fourth session from the infrastructure domain. It will be hosted by Marek Suchocki, the Infrastructure Domain Steering Committee Projects Chair. And we have two guests with us today. We have Rosa Bolaños from TPF Ingeniería, and we have David Owens from WSP. After we've had presentations from Rosa and David, we will be opening up to the floor for a general discussion, which Marek will kindly be hosting for us. The session is due to last for 90 minutes, including time for Q&A, and it's been recorded and will be made available in the replay section of the event as soon as possible. Before I hand over to Marek, I'd like to remind you that this is a hybrid session. If you're online, your microphones will remain muted for the duration of the session. If you wish to make a comment or ask a question, please use the chat box and I'll prompt you to do so. For attendees here in the room, please keep background noise to a minimum. And if you wish to make a comment or ask a question, please raise your hand. I'd like to bring your attention to the information that is on the screen currently, that BSI is committed to ensuring that participation in the development of standards is unrestricted and the process for their adoption is transparent, and that standards that are developed do not favour any particular provider but are open, non-binding and accessible to all. Please take note of our antitrust code of conduct. With that, I'm going to pass to Marek.
Thank you, John. Welcome everybody. I appreciate we're at the last session of the penultimate day, so people will be tired. Hopefully this session will prove a little bit lighter weight, so we won't be showing any express code or other schema information. It's more about sharing experiences. I would like to really start with a brief recap of where we have come to develop IFC 4.3. So in 2018, we published IFC 4.1, the first pass alignment, and that was a necessary base reference for anybody who works in infrastructure, because people like myself who are civil engineers, we like to reference things off of a line, whether it's the center of a road, the edge of a rail or a pipeline, and then we might do offsets. So IFC 4.1 was the beginning, and that then stimulated work that was, again, very noticeably absent from the data model that is IFC, namely civil engineering. So we kicked off what became IFC 4.3. It was a fantastic international collaboration. We had people from all parts of the globe, very much strongly represented from Europe, but we had participants from Asia, from the US, even from down under in Australia, and one of them's still here. So it shows that there was a global demand for civil engineering to be included in the data model for IFC. When we developed IFC 4.3, we included bridges, road. We did include rail at the beginning, but that got spun off into the railway room. So we collaborated closely with them. We also had common schemas, namely things like embankments and other shared elements. There was also a ports and waterways component, because people wanted to use IFC for harbourside structures, for canal structures. And we also identified through that process that there were things that we were not covering. And the session that preceded this one was a tunnel. That probably will lead to what's going to be called IFC 4.4. There is a new maritime room being established and a ports and waterways phase 2 project. So our work is not done. And the purpose of today's brief session is going to be to actually show some early experiences from our presenters on what they've already done with IFC 4.3. They might share some of the workflows that they've adopted to try and test using IFC 4.3 on real-world projects or in proof of concepts. Of course, they will need to share some of the challenges they've experienced, because this isn't straightforward, because we're starting afresh. But I hope they will also identify some of the opportunities that can be released into projects and for your customers as well by adopting IFC 4.3. Once the presentations have been done, we are hoping to run a bit of an open discussion, and I will also invite contributions from people in this room who are also trying out using IFC for civil engineering projects, because we really want to hear, what have you done, what are you doing, what do you hope to do? So we do want contribution from the room, and as I say, because it's the end of day session, we want this to be a slightly lighter level rather than a very much a technical discussion. So thank you for that, and with that, I think I'm going to pass straight to Rosa.
Thank you, Marek. Thank you, John. Thanks, everybody, to attend. And thanks a lot, especially to all experts that invest their time developing the IFC and the other standards of the buildingSMART, because they are very useful for everyone. So thanks a lot. It's a pleasure for me sharing our experience in IFC 4.3 in this significant and collaborative event. I am Rosa Ureña, Master Civil Engineering. I've been working in TPF company for 18 years, previously as project manager, and since 2017, I am in charge of the BIM implementation in the Department of Transport Infrastructure. Just a brief introduction of who we are. TPF is a worldwide company. It has presence in more than 30 countries and an important experience of through more than 50 years of history. In Spain, TPF Ingeniería is one of the leading engineering companies. We are leaders in key sectors like transport infrastructures, building and urban development, environment, energy, and water. Please. In the Department of Transport Infrastructures, we started the BIM implementation in 2017. In the subsequent years, we tried to obtain a maturity and expansion, developing a lot of projects using BIM methodology. In 2022, we introduced improvements in data management within our models. In 2023, at the beginning, we start with the adoption of IFC 4.3, what has brought me here today. And last November, we obtained the ISO 19650 certification. I have broken down the presentation in the following points regarding our process of adoption of IFC 4.3. Firstly, our efforts in the researching and learning about IFC, so understanding IFC 4.3, not easy. Then I will show you our first case study. Now we are immersed in another one, maybe for the next summit in October. And I will finish with some challenges we identified during the development of the project and some closing remarks based on our experience. So let's start with the first point, understanding 4.3. How did we start? We start having some problems with the geometry. We obtained what you see on the left on the screen. In fact, we were quite satisfied with the model in the original software. In that case, it was Civil 3D. But when we export to IFC, the model in IFC, it wasn't as we expected. But after some investigation, with the last release of the export IFC 4.3 in Civil 3D, we started obtaining some progress. From that moment, is what you can see on the right. From that moment, we were quite motivated to delve into more research and learning about IFC 4.3. So that was our commencement, please. So besides the advantages that we already know from the previous experiences with IFC 2.3 and 4.1, such as global standardization, interoperability, using timeless formats, the introduction of the series with the IFC 4 version, and with the IFC 4.1, the implementation of the thin surfaces, the FC alignment specific, and some improvements with the geometric representations. Now, please, Marek. So besides those benefits with the implementation of IFC 4.3, we have now new powerful advantages. For example, now we can standardize the breakdown instructions for all domains. No? That is, we have now for roads, for railways, for bridges, and for marine facilities. Also, we have the expansion of IFC class taxonomies for all these new domains. The update also of IFC annotations that enable the precise descriptions of geometric lines and points that can represent, for example, survey data, contours. And finally, we can forget about IFC building element proxy, because those elements that are difficult to categorize in other, or to include in other categories, now we can be allocated in build element objects. And we discover that when we talk about IFC, we should think in three branches. IFC is about objects, it's about relations, and it's between these objects, and it's about properties. We have different types of objects. For example, we have spatial elements that have no geometry, are like containers, and we have other physical elements like IFC elements, alignments, we have annotations. We have the relationships between those objects. For example, the easiest one that is between spatial elements, how we can divide the objects. In infrastructure, we divide into the building into stories, and now with the infrastructures, we divide into facilities and facility parts. And of course, we have properties, property sets, and property definitions. And with IFC 4.3, we can make a hierarchy of the, to adjust to any project, to any infrastructure projects. For example, to adjust it to a road, to a railway. That was not possible before, and we have to use the IFC building to describe what was happening in an infrastructure project, and that was a bit strange. But now we have the possibility to use the facilities and the facility parts. So that's fantastic. And let's now focus on our case study. We started the implementation of IFC 4.3 with Malaga Metro project. This project consists of the station of line 2, just in the most consolidated urban area in Malaga, with the difficulties of existing elements and the utilities, with the difficulties that this entails. And we established a workflow for the exportation of IFC 4.3. The process involves the identifying and assignment all the objects, the classes, and the properties, assuring that everybody in the project, every stakeholders, understand all the exchange information. The steps are what you have on the screen: creation of the spatial breakdown structure, definition of disciplines and objects to model, the assignment of classes and properties, and finally create a complete table of model elements. So firstly, we create the spatial breakdown structure. In this project, the client demanded to divide it in 3 different sections for better management during the construction phase. So we consider that the first level for for the site subdivision. So we have 3 IFC sites. Each IFC site can include several facilities, some roads, some bridges, some railways. So the next step for spatial decomposition was the division into facilities. No? In this project, in each section, we had a station. So we have divided the facilities into IFC railways and in IFC buildings. Later, we start with the definition of all the disciplines and all the objects to be modeled and the assignment of classes. We have been categorizing each individual element according to IFC classification. With the classification we can find in the GitHub repository for the buildingSMART. We can, almost some of the objects are classified like only object type, but mostly of them we try to classify with a predefined type to have more details about the objects. And finally, we have a complete table. Well, you have here an extract of the all model elements with their class and the properties. And here, this is also an extract of the IFC 4.3 schema that we finally obtained. Just mention that we try to adapt the IFC tunnel as we have seen in the section before. Well, in this project, because we were also studying in the preliminary design some alternatives with TBM, not also, because in this, finally, we designed to have a cut and cover tunnel with diaphragm walls. But we study how the schema of future IFC 4.4 can adapt to this project. In this project, we consider it as an IFC railway part. To obtain a valid classified model in IFC 4.3, we use the entity mapping in CV3D extension, modifying the IFC JSON, extra configuration JSON. But we have some limitation because it was within the rail domain with the creation of some spatial containers. So we use IFC OpenShell to complete our process. And in the next slide, we can see what we obtain. That is the IFC 4.3 schema that we were looking for, the geometry and the properties. And of course, we use the validator of the buildingSMART to validate our models. Sometimes we obtain it at the first time, but others not. That depends on the luck. And just for finish, some challenges we identified during the development of the project. First one, learning curve for optimal adoption. It's not easy to understand. For fully understand it, you need to invest a lot of time researching and learning. As we have seen before, we need to develop new workflows. Also, it's a very new standard. The community and resource needs more maturity to change our experience. And finally, software optimization. Overall, regarding these spatial elements, we consider it should be included from the original software. And some closing remarks to Phoenix. Pedagogy should be implemented for clients just to guide them in the best way to do things. And also we have to take into account that we are customers or can be customers of the software companies. And also they need to know our needs. So it's a work of everyone. So that is my contact information if you need any help. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rosa. Yeah, thank you, Rosa. That's a fantastically inspiring presentation showing the journey you've been on. Without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our online colleague, Dave Owens from WSP, who has also been working with his team in the UK to explore using IFC 4.3 for, I believe, highways projects, but he'll be able to explain further what they've done and the challenges and opportunities that they have experienced. So over to you, Dave. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So hello, everyone. Pleasure to join you. My name's David Owens. I'm the head of digital engineering at WSP UK's roads, highways business. I'm a long-time advocate of open data standards and open source software. I'm a civil engineer for some 20 years, and I'd like to think, right around the loop. I started my career as a designer. I became a contractor's design manager, during which time I became a consultant and worked at the UK's leading road authority, that being now called National Highways. And in that time, helped support them understand building information modeling, the requirements that had come from our government to implement building information modeling. I had done so from a project perspective and helped clients understand exactly how they can instigate 3D modeling, information management, and data-centric ways of work from a client perspective. And my lessons learned will kind of go through that story arc. I just have to say on Rosa's presentation, excellent, and I hope kind of tease me up a little bit to talk about some of the finer points. So I'm going to go into a little bit more detail but theory about some of the challenges that it sounds like Rosa and her team have also overcome. So just a couple of slides on WSP, the things that we're known for doing in the UK, that's for certain, is working collaboratively with others to develop major infrastructure programs such as the Smart Motorways Alliance in the UK, adding infrastructure to our existing motorway network to get more productivity, more capacity into it. But kind of the foundations and still some of the good stuff that I see from the wider WSP team is new, what I would call greenfield works. So Carlisle Link Road is really close to my heart because the team that deliver this now for WSP, I worked with 10 years ago in the first throes of building information modeling to really roll out a 3D modeling first, data-rich, information model-based production of our deliverables as a professional services company. And as you can see in the bottom right, we look at all data about our production process. So hazards are a key facet to creating a design, and it's one of the most important data sets that we need to communicate with all stakeholders and partners about our project, and doing so with the 3D interface as a means to do that is one of the best ways to alert our partners to our concerns around the job we're about to build. So digital engineering, what do we mean by that? What is our vision and mission in WSP? It is about how we're going to transform our productivity. All infrastructure, as we currently know it, is often late and over budget. We have an opportunity to improve to such an extent now with technology that will become trivial, and we'll be able to build a better world around us because of the technology that we're able to bring to bear in this market. Unfortunately, we're one of the last industries to really take advantage of the technology that is now available, but our mission is to overcome that complexity and make it simple, and become digitally literate, competent throughout our business, and make it a market-leading proposition. It looks like, from what I can see of Rosa's team, we've we've got our work cut out, and we've got certainly got competition there. We've got to keep a couple of number of goals. We're still trying to educate. There's 750 colleagues in the UK business. There's 12,000 from the roads business. There's 750 colleagues. There's 12,000 in the UK. There's 70,000 in WSP globally. So it's quite an effort to really communicate the potential and the value that digital transformation can bring to our industry. But we're doing our best. Why is it important? Again, a long series of government drives in the UK to really push the transformation of our industry, going back Etham and Lagum now to the government being mandated in 2011, the government construction strategy in 2011, the mandate in 2016, to the latest industrial strategies. They are all asking us to do the same thing, and that's to move that little red line on the chart, our comparative productivity forward. How we do that is through digitization, automation, and modern methods of construction. And why do we need to do it? Because we've got a massive challenge in building a more vibrant society around us. So, into the challenges that we have. I'm not going to name and shame client, but the documentation, the snippets of the documentation you can see on screen are the specification, the contract requirements that we have had from one substantial client in the UK, one spending an awful lot of money on a significant facility. They are an advocate of IFC. They are using IFC. They have some insight to the benefits that it is bringing for them. But unfortunately, when I see requirements such as this for data, it makes my heart sink, because it displays a lack of awareness as to what they're imposing upon the contract and what they're imposing on teams. There is an expectation there without the robustness to be an educated and an informed, forward-thinking client, and to show exactly how each asset, the data they will require of that, and how they will benefit from acquiring that data throughout the design life cycle, the construction life cycle, and then latterly into operations and maintenance. And as you can see, I had only access to the version upon which my colleagues had put our comments, how significant number of comments we've made. What made that worse was that that wasn't issued to us prior to tender. It was issued post-price agreement, post-award. So thus making our challenge to convey the differences between those two states in terms of a commercial problem, in terms of an addition of work or potential savings, became a matter of conflict between the project team and the client team. And again, different levels of experience and knowledge of the subject matter has meant friction building up between the teams. When in reality, what we all want is collaboratively developing our understanding and developing the use cases and our understanding of the value that data can bring to our projects, really rising to the top and being the basis upon which we work together. So that's some of the bad. Now in what we're trying to do to mitigate some of these problems. How my team, where we're digitally enabling project delivery, where we take an approach, the approach we take to digital project delivery is clear. We want those requirements coming from the downstream end of the facility owner's asset and maintenance team. We want to bring them right to the very beginning of our commission with that client. We want them to left shift those requirements to the very front end, pre-contract award as specification, so that we can develop that response in our tender, that we can be clear on the level of information needed, the level of information geographical, geometric and data geometric, the data, the geometry, and the documentation that we need to provide to them to satisfy them that they are safe to proceed, that they have a robust business case, they have a robust cost, so that we can proceed. Now, this dynamic of us producing data that meets their expectations is the element that I think buildingSMART and our international community can play a big role in determining. Because at the very earliest stages of projects is not the same data as we need to produce during detailed design and for construction. Now, we need to be able to leverage information delivery manuals, in my opinion, to be able to slice and dice the IFC data schema into something that is appropriate per stage. That's a big piece of work that I think we're all going to be trying to overcome in the next few years. How we've begun to achieve this is because we have access to a number of information requirements, particularly asset information requirements of several different clients, all of whom have slightly subtly different information requirements. We're trying to compile all of that into a master data set and give simple access to our design teams to create a level of information need design brief, which we communicate through, in this instance, a little bit of a dashboard. So on a Transport for Scotland project, each of our teams would be given access to this. They would click on the appropriate suitable assets and types that they would be seeking to deliver, and it will give them access and insight into the properties and the attributes needed to satisfy the client at that point in time. But we go beyond with that. We use that as a foundation for further steps. We implement this philosophy, a data-centric way of work philosophy, where there's information requirements set the stall out of a project database, and upon which then we create the records in that database from the design. Now, of course, integrating all of that is quite a challenge. Thankfully, we've had a little bit of help from Marek and his colleagues, but we're also doing our own work to build upon this ecosystem of tools and solutions and processes to really make this work. We believe that every bit of project data should go into a master project database. I'm not going to describe the structure or the architecture of that. Just take my word that a big database, a big rich pot of data is the core, is the key to us being able to facilitate an improved way of work. Getting insight into the assets data that we are producing in flight from the earliest stages of the project, the facility, the spaces, the assets and components and the systems themselves, all of which can be made data rich, go into a database, and then drill down through, again, dashboards as a simple, easiest communication point of communication to the project team. Get my slides in the right order next time. If we combine that with other technologies, such as those around what I call automated design, the combination of programming scripts and tools such as Dynamo, Rhino, Grasshopper, generative components, take your pick, we have the ability to generate a design more quickly and give us the data that we've never had in a fraction of the time that we have ever produced. And in doing so, we will be able to get insights readily and easily that will be able to tell us what we're doing, how we're progressing. Are we on time? Are we going to cost our clients more money? Are we building something that maybe has too much embedded carbon, and adjusting what we do in flight? To do all of that, though, the complexity has grown immensely. I'm very fortunate WSP have invested in my team to be able to deal with this complexity. So my team currently deals with little pinpricks out here. I've got a wide array of team of about 15 to 20 people now who are dealing with XML. They're dealing with SQL Server and SQL databases. They're dealing with API. As you'd expect, we're dealing with Civil 3D and Revit to create our design. We're dealing with Power BI and the Microsoft stack to illustrate and to store all these things. We're having to deal, like Rosa's team did, with JSON so that we can get the config file right for Civil 3D. And then again, we all then loop back to produce lovely rich data, which talks to the IFC schema, but also produces the .ifc files that we need to share with our clients. New skills, I just labor this point somewhat. We've had to invest both in training and recruitment of non-civil engineers into our civil engineering business to be able to cope with the high degree of computer literacy needed now to be able to create these models. And to benefit from the data that we can find. Using Excel, believe you me, it's my favorite tool in the world, but it is not robust. It is not suitable for dealing with the wide array of requirement that we have going through. Personally, I'd much prefer to see the IFC OWL or IFC JSON and the like used, or the IFC building technical website and the resources within used as a means to consume and create the data schema for assets. But we're still away from that. At the moment, we most commonly typically will consume a spreadsheet from our clients. We'll have to manipulate that using Visual Studio so that we can create the XML, which will inform and set out our SQL database using the tool that Autodesk are creating for us. Then looping that back out using a combination of Excel and JSON, creating and preparing the translation files for Civil 3D, so we can map the property sets using our MDM database tool to the geometry, and then we can use the export functions with the JSON schema mapper to be able to output to it. All of that is done through my small team of 15 amongst 750 engineers. Now, is that where we believe that we need to be as an industry, or do we need to democratize this capability out so that all engineers, at least of a certain level, can cope with this kind of complexity? For me, the benefits are clear. I'm just going to throw this one out here as nearly my final one or two slides. If we can work in this data-rich way, the facilities are available to us to automatically create deliverables. To do so in a fraction of the time and under a certain significantly reduced cost to our clients. But to hold that body of data in such a way so that we can leverage these technologies is the thing that certainly Autodesk are helping us with, and that we're working on to increase our skills in these technologies so that we can deliver this wholesale throughout the business. Because I really just want people to show me the data, and there is a vast array of different and complex technologies out there that can help us deliver improved productivity and improved infrastructure for the future. And that's a wrap.
Thank you very much, David. But I think that's a great backup to what Rosa shared about the experiences, and I think maybe the investments that people in this room and people we collaborate with need to make in order to exploit the potential of what IFC 4.3 and other data-driven approaches to civil engineering offer. I am going to open the session now to the floor, but I'm going to invite two speakers first. The first one I'm going to ask is Roger Grant, who is sat over there, because Roger is working with the US federal highways around implementing IFC 4.3 as a deliverable demand for bridges in particular. So, Roger, if you don't mind just sharing a few of your experiences and what your aspirations are as a group, and what value it will bring to obviously the DOTs and US federal highways.
Yeah, thank you, Marek. And I'll also point out Thomas Liebig is here, who's supporting the project, so he can clean up whatever I say that might go a little off. I don't know if anyone else from that project is joining here, but what I wanted to share, is it sound coming through? I think so, yeah. Is that good? Oh, that's a lot better. All right. So yeah, this in the U.S. we've been working on using IFC to develop a standard for modeling bridges. The approach we took was to identify all the exchanges across the life cycle of a bridge as it goes from planning to design, construction, operations. And then we selected the design to construction exchange and attempted to specify everything that would be found on a set of drawings for a common bridge and attempt to use IFC to represent that. And this goes back to the work that was done, I guess, on IFC 4.1 to strengthen some of the definitions and items in IFC 4.1, and that's progressed along to 4.3, which is being used now. Initially, the project developed a model view definition, but then that's transitioned now to an information delivery specification that represents the requirements for that exchange. And and this project is supported by, in the U.S., the Federal Highway Administration, and then the state departments of transportation that own and operate all of the bridges, the primary bridge, well, many of the bridges in the U.S. I wouldn't say all, but many. And so there's pretty broad participation from the states. So we have a lot of support for this. In the U.S., there's an organization, the American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials, and they have identified IFC as the standard for modeling bridges in a resolution that they passed, and the IDM for this exchange was balloted and accepted by that organization. So there's some real solid support for this activity in the U.S. and where it currently stands. We've been working on this in something called a pooled fund for 5 years. It's just been renewed for another 5 years. The progression to this point has been to work with many software vendors in the U.S. to support their implementation in their products of the exchange specification, the IDS, and I guess the transition from the MVD also requires them to support the alignment-based reference view definition as the basis. And the vendors are progressing along that way. I don't think they are fully there yet, and we will continue to work with them in the next round. Also now the first states are starting to run projects where they're going to require these deliverables in IFC to come in, and they would attempt to use those in the process of validating the design and everything that they are doing as asset owners. So we're starting to see this moving from development to implementation, and I think this process will continue. I guess it's not an overnight process. There's a lot involved, and there's a fair amount of investment that's going into this, but it's going to build something that's quite durable, I think, and reusable. And I think at a point in time, we're not there yet, but somewhere over this next 5-year period, we'll start to see a lot of the bridges in the US being delivered using IFC and enabling the exchange between different applications. So I think that's what I can say about this. I've worked with the executive committee of the pooled fund and worked for the Federal Highway Administration on the project that led up to this, along with Tim Chipman, who's not here today, but he did a lot of the work on that initial modeling. And now Thomas has picked up that effort and supports the project in how IFC is used to express the requirements. The other thing I would add is we're also working on a data dictionary to complement the IDM and the IDS, and we have developed all the content for what we believe is the US version of elements and properties in a data dictionary. We're looking now with how to deploy that, and we're going to do a couple pilot projects that are being kicked off just now and with WSP, as a matter of fact, in the U.S. and my organization working together for the Federal Highway Administration to figure out how we can use the data dictionary to complement the implementation of the IDS and alignment-based reference view in these software products. So I hope that's a sufficient update and not too much. And I'd invite Thomas to add anything to that might give some additional perspective on how IFC is being used in this process.
Yeah, thank you, Roger. And whilst Thomas is grabbing the microphone, we also have Alexa Mitchell online if she wanted to share anything. Alexa is also involved in the adoption of IFC 4.0. Yeah, no, she's online, luckily. And Alexa has also presented earlier this week in yesterday's infrastructure domain session 2 around some of the work. So whilst we'll maybe get Alexa warmed up if she's got anything to say, Thomas.
Yeah, or if Alexa is ready, maybe she can start first. No. Okay. No, I think Roger already said almost everything. So I think it was a very fair and complete overview. The only thing maybe I want to add is that we are now in the beginning of phase 2, the additional 5 years. And at the beginning, we are trying to relook our methodology, coming from domain requirements, information requirements, to a definition, to the data and IDM, then to the data dictionary, derive the requirements for the IFC exchange and the IDS to validate it. So I think we're trying to, let's say, a little bit rewrap this. And I think also the second phase now should be much more practical. So there's also an invitation to all vendors to join and also bring in sample data. We had waited quite a while for IFC 4.3 to be in final ISO standard, to be ready and stamped. And the stamp is now on. So there's no excuse not to go further. So I hope that in the next 5 years, we will see much more also practical results, having real bridges being tested, using the data dictionary, using IDS, and giving the DOTs the means to demand it in projects and also to validate it.
Thank you, Thomas. Yeah, John's just sending a link to Alexa. I mean, I think just listening to what's been said, I want to emphasize just how significant this is. US Federal Highways has provided pool funding. Second round, by the sounds of it, is coming through because they see importance in having richer asset data acquisition. I know one of the drivers has been bridge inspections because there have been failures in the US, but they happen in other countries. Italy is another case in point. We are all living, particularly in the Western world, with 100, sometimes 200 and more year old infrastructure. So this isn't all about new infrastructure. This is also about getting better data from stuff that already exists. So having that stored in a consistent manner, such as using IFC 4.3, is a huge opportunity. So John, did you send a link to Alexa?
Okay, great. Thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you. Yep, we can hear you.
Perfect. I wasn't planning on being on camera, so it's quite early here in the US. So, but thank you for the opportunity, guys. Now, thank you, Roger, for giving that update. It's been really exciting 5 years. I know that is a long time, but as David mentioned, it is a complicated process that hasn't been tried before in infrastructure. And so it's taken some time to agree on the standardization. If you can think of, let's say the equivalent of what we're doing in the US is basically if the European Union would agree on one standard. That's the significance of this project. 50 state DOTs have agreed on the standard for bridges, which is significant because, as you guys know, software vendors have lots of clients, lots of customers all over the world. And so to start standardizing how we approach data management for infrastructure projects, and in this case, bridges particularly, is going to be a win-win for everybody. And so in terms of, I agree, David, democratization of the process is important, but it's going to take a long time until the standards are in place. Everybody has agreed to the standards, and the software supports those standards from all the directions, right? The connections to the BSDD, the back and forth with the validation service, and not just the production of IFC files, but all of the ecosystem that it takes to provide quality data. I think we pretty much covered it all, but I just wanted to add those comments. And there are over 20 state DOTs that are funding this project in addition to federal highways, and the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation and the Iowa Department of Transportation are going to be doing a pilot project using all of the standards that were developed as part of this pooled fund on 2 bridge projects coming up this year. So we hope to have something to share with you guys at the Fall Summit for at least one of those projects that is going to be taking advantage of the buildingSMART Accelerated program. So thank you.
Thank you, Alexa, and apologies for dropping you in on it that way. Dave, I see you just put your hand up quickly.
Yeah, I think on that time piece, Marek, you and I have known each other maybe 10 years now. We've been striving towards the place that we are today, where we've got this common data model now, which represents the built environment, and particularly our favorite asset, the highway. For my part, I've come to a realization of late that actually to affect change, to get more people to stand up and pay attention, it is improving our productivity in the delivery of our service that's going to make or break that conversation. So our ability, our agility to deal with that variation, because there's going to be a large variation from all the clients that we deal with globally, certainly, in what they consider to be data and how they value it. We need an agility and ability to be able to deal with that. And then we must meet their expectations in terms of productivity, giving them the design that they want on time, ideally on budget as well, will satisfy that client and get them to take note of our production methods and the data richness that we can give them. That is the way that I think we can transform our industry, because unfortunately, I've become impatient with the speed and of change that it takes to coalesce and collaborate on what data that we want. So I've pivoted my attitude towards, I'm just going to remain agile, I'm going to develop, and then I'm going to be able to produce irrespective of what that standard looks like. But the one ask I would put is make it machine readable. As soon as it goes into documentation, it's adding a step which is limiting my productivity. IFC has actually shown the way on that. I love what the technical pages are doing, but they are very difficult to consume for the uninitiated. So I think, again, if I was to ask the buildingSMART community to do something, is to maybe make an intermediary layer between the very technical parts of our website and how we're consuming it. Rosa's slides actually really spoke to the work that they're having to do, the work that we're having to do. But how consumable that is to a day-to-day, everyday Joe engineer right now, it's beyond them. So we need to make something in between that really makes it very, very simple for them. I'm not sure what that is. We've got some ideas. We've talking about it, Marek, but I think we need to remain agile. We need to make it easier and simpler to consume, and then we need to deliver.
Thank you, Dave. Yeah, and I actually think we've suffered each other for about 13 years rather than just 10. So we've covered a bit of light rail with Rosa. Dave did a bit about highways. Roger and Alexa and Thomas talked a bit about bridges. But before I go to the floor, I want to introduce Chris Miller from RHDHV, who can also share a couple of experiences about how ports and waterways projects have been adopted. So Chris is just over there. So RHDHV, for those who don't know, were one of the sponsoring teams working on the ports and waterways extensions as part of the IFC 4.3 work. So Chris, over to you.
Thanks, Marek. Ports and waterways gave us confidence, I think, to use IFC within Royal Haskellingh. And what we have seen as a result of that is greenfield and brownfield maritime clients coming to us with requests to use IFC in their projects. So Greenfield port projects are, well, not few and far between, but less common than brownfield sites, certainly. On the greenfield sites, we're seeing clients asking us now to use IFC as a data schema, particularly around the production of bills of quantities that they can then pass to contractors for cost modeling. So it's for us a nice use case that we are certainly happy to engage with those clients on. On brownfield sites, the clients that we work with have asset management libraries already that are well embedded in their ERP systems and quite often very hard to change away from because of the way that they've built up their organizations. However, what we're doing with those clients is we're mapping their asset management against IFC 4.3 in collaboration with them. In itself, as an individual activity, not particularly valuable, but these are clients that we work with as their designers and consultants. Internally in the organization, we, I think, like shared from WSP, are on a journey to develop a number of design tools, and the underlying data schema in those design tools we try and use IFC for. So if we put the two things together, where we're undertaking planning and design and coming up with outputs for clients that are data-driven and aligned with IFC, and we've also then mapped their asset management or their asset breakdown against IFC, then the transfer of that data through the construction and into the handover operations and maintenance phase becomes a nice, much more data-driven process. So I think that the result of that is more proliferation of tools within the organization, which are in themselves modular, but can be linked together into longer processes that we then undertake bigger parts of the design process with. So using IFC as the data schema for that has given us some real efficiencies. And as a result of that, or in parallel with that, we're now using IFC as the data schema for our reference architecture for our digital twin core that we're developing as well now. So you start to see that from one end of the supply chain to the other, that IFC is being integrated, and I think it's a really positive step that we're managing to do that.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chris. I know, Roger, you put your hand up. Did you want to make another point quickly? Wait for the mic. And whilst we're waiting, so I will start taking comments, contributions from the floor. So warm yourselves up.
Well, I think that was a good point. I don't remember his name, from WSP in the UK about, speed, because as we pointed out, it's taken a while to get here, but I also think we've built a very solid baseline. That was the idea of using the design to construction exchange, because it has all the elements you need for almost everything else. So now we think we can accelerate additional exchanges much more rapidly and in an organized way, because they're all defined at a high level anyway.
And so there was a hand raised over there. Did you want to? And please introduce yourself as well.
Hello, everybody. Okay. Hey, everybody. My name is Dan. My base job is as the surveyor, but working as a BIM manager now at a contractor company, so builders. I come from to this discussion from the perspective of a builder. A lot of things that have been said here, I consider completely 100% true. But at the same time, from my point of view as a builder, there are some things that have not been said. There are certain things new to the IFC for XV schema that have not been discussed, like IFC linear placement. Does anybody in this room know what that is? Okay, so basically, it's not a property, it's not an attribute, it's a specialization of IFC object placement, which that is a super triplane IFC. It's pretty complicated. Anyway, why do I need this? From the point of view of the contractor, I want to run an IDS on the IFC 4x3. I want to see from this kilometer to that kilometer how many light poles I have, maybe. Or I want to see in the context of a bridge from axis 10 to axis 50, how many piers do I have, how many columns? So we need to talk also about this, the point of view of a contractor. Another thing that has been added to the IFC 4x3 schema are additional common property sets. I refer here in the case of a contractor for the common property set, P set tolerances. This property set allows you to add as-built information directly into the IFC. And this could help not only me, the contractor, but also, of course, the facility manager, the operator, the client of the highway, bridge, whatever. So yeah, that's it. I wanted to point that out, that from the point of view of a contractor, of course, all of the new classes help. Even though I don't know why there's no class for an airport, I find that weird. Okay, we are waiting for the tunnel, but with the airport we ignored completely. Of course that helps, but there are additional things here like chainage information, stuff like that. And from the vendor point of view, there are not a lot from what I know, a lot of softwares today existing on the market that can export information like this, IFC linear placement. And the ones that do, they also export an axis. But currently we have a project in Romania, a motorway project, where we have 12 structures, bridges, viaducts, overpasses. Okay, and I am converting them, I'm doing this currently, and this is my job. And I'm making them now, this is a real world project we are working on. I'm converting them to IFC 4x3. My problem is, when you export the bridge, one bridge, with IFC linear placement information, it always exports also the axis. I have 12 bridges. When you create the federated model, what will happen then? You will have doubled the axis? Or do you have to, okay, provide the linear placement information to the bridge, then go in, I don't know, Blender BIM, let's say delete the axis, and then create a separate IFC 4x3 that contain only the axis? These are, I know, technical questions, but they need, in my opinion, to be discussed and somehow resolved. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. I think Sergei's said something about overemphasis on properties. These are manual data entries where other concepts such as placements, geometry, materials, classification are built in software functionalities. So I think the point is taken, but it's, in a way, you're articulating one of the opportunities that we have, but we need to work through the actual way of doing this. So yeah, thank you, Dan, for the question. I knew you were going to ask.
What's that?
Please introduce yourself so that everybody knows who you are.
Okay. I'm Karen Andersson from the Swedish Transport Administration. I've been part of these projects since 2016 something, and I've been working very hard with the IFC Road project, and I've been part of the IFC Bridge project and the implementation projects and all projects that have been going on for a long time. And I'm so happy to see all these incredible implementations, and I really thank you for sharing these very good examples. And I think what we heard from the back here is applaudable. It was really good that we have some people who are really pushing the implementation and going ahead already, although we don't see so much implementation in software. But from an owner's perspective, I think now we have to start asking for this. And I don't know what the driver is with the presentations today. I know the driver with AASHTO and the DOTs, but and I'm really glad to see Federal Highways Agency are finally becoming members of buildingSMART. That's very good also. The more road administrations we have, the better it is. And so it really is a question to our two presenters in the beginning. If what has been the driver? Has your clients had any requests for IFC 4.3, or has it been like on your own initiatives?
In our case, well, thank you very much. In our case, the client demands the models in IFC 4.1. It was in our own that we started having problems with the geometry, and that was the only solution for finding something more or less correct. So, but the client only demands IFC 4.1. It was all on our own.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Dave, what's your drivers?
Oh, drivers. Primarily, first of all, yes, the client's requirements, as always. They are founded on specification. They are founded on standards, British standards, ISO standards, SENS. Yes, absolutely. Karin, have we had a client ask for IFC, an asset owner operator of a highway? No, we haven't, not yet. But I wouldn't expect them to yet either. So the reason behind that, their asset management systems are largely geospatial, and they are significant investments that they have made over a number of years to respect the assets that they've got, and often they've grown as they get a better understanding of what the assets they need to manage are. So in England particularly, you know, the pavement has been the chief asset, and that has given rise to a pavement management system. It's not quite geospatial, so that makes things equally different, equally difficult. The driver for us, as I said, is productivity. It's leveraging data to improve our productivity, improve our production, doing so in a consistent fashion with a core consistency of data model gives us an ability to respect our clients' wishes and needs, but to actually drive our productivity forward. We do have a developer client of something particularly sensitive, so I'm being very vague about it, who have asked for IFC about their entire estate. And I respect why they've done that from the building perspective, from the big concrete box perspective, but they've asked exactly the same of us from a highways perspective. Now, we definitely wanted to rise to that challenge, and with the help of a lot of people, including Marek's colleagues, we've been able to achieve that. But was it the right thing to do for the local authority, which will ultimately maintain that road in the future? Probably not. It doesn't respect their asset management system. It doesn't respect the data that they need. We'll probably have to reproduce data for their asset management systems at some point down the life cycle of the project. Luckily, we work in a data-centric way, which means with a little bit of jiggery pokery, with a little bit of playing around of an ETL tool, I can produce shapefiles of our design that have been verified as built and will populate their asset management system. I've been doing that since 2015. Now, to speak to the other chap in the room a moment ago about his frustrations, I share them. We are not ready for this as an industry. I heard the nervousness in your voice, and I really admire you for standing up and speaking and challenging the group. As I said, I believe we need to make this a bit more consumable to a new audience. IFC has been around for buildings people for a very long time. You're not often talking to the owner operator of a building in these forums. You're talking to the designer, the architect, structural engineer, whomever, the contractor, hopefully, maybe. We're not talking to the owner operator here. The big drive, the big push for us is to realize it's a data model. It's to get the asset owner operator to buy into that data model and benefit from it, to line up then the production of the data throughout the life cycle when they're building a new road or they're just changing the barrier following an accident. Now that is when IFC will really come into its own, but it won't be because of the file format. It'll be because of the data model behind it.
Thank you, Dave. Does anyone else in the room want to chip in on the conversation? Andre, please.
Maybe a general question to everyone in the room. So what is your experience with IFC alignment? Does it cover your requirements? Does it work for you? Maybe also for you? Did you use IFC alignment?
I'll go if you want.
Rosa's about to chip in.
Okay.
Oh, Rosa after Rosa.
Oh, you first. You first.
Okay. Again, our client is not informed enough to have explicitly asked us to produce IFC with the appropriate alignment geometry placed into IFC. They've asked for a separate deliverable which passes the alignment forward to the contractor. I know it's funny, isn't it?
Well, in this case, our client is demanded in IFC 4.1 that includes the IFC alignment. So for IFC alignment, we used to utilize the software ISTRAM, and it's thankfully or luckily it's included. So for us here in Spain, it's really easy to accommodate and include the IFC alignment in our models.
Thank you. We've got a question or a comment online from Leanne, which was, isn't the point of IFC that data would be interoperable with upstream and downstream systems, including asset management? I mean, I think that's the ambition, but as I think the conversation we've had, the reality is perhaps a little bit more nuanced and a bit more complicated, particularly because the truth is, with the exception of a few people, software vendors that are represented downstairs in the exhibition hall, actually the support for IFC 4.3 is still very much in early days. And I would argue that the asset management side of the world is a long way behind, even in buildings, let alone for infrastructure. So yes, that's the kind of the long-term goal, but we shouldn't, let's not run before we can walk. And again, I think the intention of this session we're holding at the moment is that we've got some real world examples of people who are on that beginning of the journey, which, you know, Rosa and Dave articulated very well. Any other points? I appreciate we are getting towards the end of the day and people are itching to go to the dinner on your glad rags. But yeah, please put your hands up if anything. Okay, well, if not, I would be quite happy to let you go early. I was taking a couple of notes when people were speaking. So I'll try to just recap a couple of things. So I think Rosa said something that, I don't know if anyone really picked up on it, but no more need for proxy objects. When you use IFC 4.3, you're mapping to real civil infrastructure elements. So anyone who's had the experience of using IFC 2x3 for civil engineering, and as a software vendor, we get people complaining that why does Civil 3D not do IFC 2x3? Why is it not certified? Because it doesn't know what a window or a door is. It's not designed for that, but it is very good at civil engineering, which is what IFC 4.3 is designed for. Otherwise, it's just proxies. So please, please, please stop using 2x3, at least for infrastructure. And in some respects, a comment that Dave made very early in his presentation was poor specifications lead to poor outcomes. Now, I appreciate that we are in early days, but if you do see a client requirement that doesn't make sense, that you end up putting lots of yellow comments on, then ask them, educate them. There are BIM experts out there who write dreadful specs because they pull in IFC, COBE, ISO 19650, BIM level 2. I've seen BIM level 3 in recent specs. This is insane. Keep it simple, stupid, KISS, for those who know that phrase. It's better to be simpler but good rather than complex and really bad. But definitely speak to your clients, tell them use IFC 4.3 if you're doing civil infrastructure. And in fact, if you're doing buildings, because frankly, it's the way forward. So we need to stop doing something that is 18 years old, as Angel said in his keynote a couple of days ago. What else have I got here? I think Rosa said something else, which was about the community, the people working alongside you need a bit more maturity. It's no good having one organization like TPF leading the charge and everybody else being left behind. So we need to encourage as many organizations in the food chain to get involved. And I think that also came out of what Dave was presenting. I felt that something Dave highlighted was really interesting. He talked about introducing, I guess, professionalism in managing geometry, data, and where necessary documentation. So this, I'm a civil engineer. I was educated. We were engineers. We've got to engineer stuff. I think we've got to become a bit more data centric and realize that this is now a new skill set. And you did literally talk about new skills are needed. So within your own organizations, I do encourage you to bring in new people, attract new entrants into our industry. This is actually an opportunity to bring young people who may have never considered the construction sector as a career of choice, but actually, I'm not saying IFC is at all sexy, because it ain't, but data, using VR, using analytics, getting those new insights that David talked about, I think these are really interesting ways to bring in a new audience and expand your teams. What else? I think, again, the question that you raised, Karen, you're a client, you need to start specifying this stuff. You can't just be a follower, you need to be a leader.
Yes, Marek.
Okay.
It's the right answer, Karen.
I promise.
I promise. Very good. She's committed to investing in this. So, and beyond that, I think, you know, I'm astounded. One statistic that Dave gave us that I actually started working with WSP 14 years ago when I actually first joined Autodesk. And at the time, it was a company of around 10,000 people globally. He told us they are now 70,000 staff internationally. But from the UK civil engineering side, there's 750 people, and his team is just 15. So I think, you know, it's a seed. It's certainly not a mature part of the business, but the opportunity is there for all of us. So thank you very much to Rosa and David for being our presenters. Contributions from Roger, Chris, and the room. Roger's put his hand up as he wants to have the last word. I am trying to go myself, you know.
I just want to make the point, because I'm not sure I made it strongly enough. I think what is happening in the United States with the bridge modeling is very significant, and how it can move the needle for everyone to get all the states requiring IFC deliverables for bridges is pretty major activity, accomplishment. So.
Yeah, thank you. And you know, I'm going to be a little bit cynical. I do work for an American software company, but the US has been behind the curve when it comes to open standards. But in this respect, we should give them full credit, because they're leading the charge and will perhaps change the world. So, you know, thank you for yourself, Roger, Alexa, and others who are working on this. So without further ado, thank you very much for coming to this final infrastructure domain, not room, session. Tomorrow will be the last day, but I can only encourage you to get involved. And if you see a problem with IFC 4.3, get involved in the projects, help us extend it, and you might have to put your hand in your pocket as well. So thank you, and enjoy the dinner tonight.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
And thanks to Marek. That closes the sessions today. If you're going to this summit dinner, enjoy yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave, for joining in online as well. And you, Alexa.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Alexa.
Speak soon.
See you.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.